So this is where we left off last time. Our goal for the end of this video is to just sort of start to block out a head, right? So if we look at our um, what I'm looking for, and I think this is going to end up being two videos. We're not actually going to sculpt the head onto the figure just yet like this. What we'll do is I'm going to just make this a sort of a one-off two videos where we just out of a sphere start to learn basic proportions of sculpting a head. Like for example, this head right here. I'll probably go more detail into the ear, like creating all the canal and all that good stuff. Because the goal is to take this model and start to think about what our next character is going to be. For us, if you're following along, we're going to make this Hercules. So if you're wondering how I got this model in here, because I'm assuming that this is sort of your a beginner tutorial is and if you're like left clicking or with your mouse clicking on these models and you're not selecting it, make sure that lock object modes is checked off, and that'll allow you to select things in the scene. So what I did is I just went to file up here, and then I went to append, and then inside of this um, I have all my folder directories. I usually just keep mine in a usually in my documents folder, and I just create a folder called Blender. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you want to keep it organized and not really trashy. So here's my male anatomy, and then I have this 09 Blender. And then if you go inside the objects folder, my model is just called um, male anatomy model. So I'm going to select that in the eyes, and I'm going to hit append, and then just sort of move that over to the side here and scale that up. So now you can see. Now, if it looks weird, if you press 5 on your keyboard, you can see it in the different perspective versus orthographic views. So, so the goal is to just lay out where things are. If you're using different types of reference, it's not necessarily always going to be perfectly correct. Like for example, like you could notice his love handle, his rib cage is sitting right on top of his love handles. I have a little bit of a spacing there, and that's just because of the reference I'm using is more of a arm, like skeletal muscle stuff. This guy is like almost pure muscle. So they're both stylized hero. All right, so I'm going to pause the video now, and I'm going to jump into just the basics of modeling a head from reference. So I just typed in DuckDuckGo male head reference, and ideally you want to get something like this where everything's already lined up for you, or I'll make a video maybe after we do the Hercules one just on how to create reference like this or something like this. Now, if you're beginning and you're just starting off, I do not think it's a bad idea at all, and there's a little bit of conjecture in the artist community about using a drawing as a base of a sculpting piece. Um, because it's really, I guess this guy would be great. I mean, maybe I'll just model Chuck Liddell in another video. The reason I say that it's okay to use a drawing is because they already have all of this stuff laid out for you. So I think this is an Andrew Loomis drawing from his maybe drawing from more for what it's worth book. So I'm just going to click on View File. I'm going to use this image right here, and I'll add this link in the bottom of the YouTube description. So I'll just name this AL for Loomis Head Sketch. Now, I'm not going to use this verbatim because I'm going to just cover, and there's no 3/4 view, but I want to cover all of that stuff in this video, like how to sculpt all that stuff. So I'm going to pause it again and jump back into Blender and load up this file. Alright, so here we are back in Blender, and just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to File, New, and I'm just creating a new sculpting scene. So I'm going to hit Don't Save. So let's go ahead and set up our reference as well. So I'm going to hit Tab and go to Object Mode, right? And inside of Object Mode, let's delete these guys. I'm going to go to where my image is, which I have everything going to the desktop, and I'm just going to grab this and just drop it in my scene. Now, I'll do that twice, you can see I have two empty objects here. Now for this object, I'm going to go ahead and hit N. And I want to make sure that the rotation is all zeroed out for now. And I'm going to do the same for this one. Make sure all of these are zeroed out. And I want to make sure the location on both of these guys is set to 0. There we go. Now if I'm looking at my front here, so I'm going to hit 1. And you'll notice if you rotate these around the different axes, if you type in 90 here, you'll have your rotation there. And I hit S to scale, and then G. I'm just going to line up that center line that they give me with my world here. And I'm going to do a better job of that once I start sculpting. But for now, let's just do something like this. I'm just looking to line up the bottom of the edge here with this and that line there. Now, if we hit 3, I'm going to select my other anatomy reference here. And we're going to need to rotate that on 90. And then we're going to need to rotate it, let's see, on Z on, what am I looking at here? Yeah, it was right, 180 on Y. And I'm going to hit S to scale that up as well. Now what I'm looking at this point is I want these two values to be the same, just for scaling purposes. So the value of this scale here is, it's like 3.2 and 3.7. So if I just went in here and I hard typed in, or I'm sorry, for the scale I have 2.1 all the way around. Let's just do 3 for all 3 of these guys. So just left clicking and dragging and typed in 3. And let's type in 3 for scale on all 3 of these. And then I'm not necessarily worried about the position of the side view because it doesn't line up with the front of the entire plane. So I'm just going to hit G on my side view. So I'm hitting 3 and I'm going to move it up out here to the front. And I'm going to bring that down so that line lines up to the line there. Okay, so now when I look at it, I have something like this. I'm going to grab my move tool and just etch it over. Now, I'm actually roughly using these two planes. So I'm going to be like turning them on and off a lot. And let's go ahead and grab our sphere at this point and just move that forward. I don't want to, I do not want to move it left and right. And then I'm just going to move it up and down because I want my scaling to be the same. Okay, so let's go to our front view here. And I'm going to move that up. And let's just nudge this guy over too so that lines up. Alright, now if I select these two, I can lock the location. Right, I can highlight all these. I can left click and drag too to do this instead of having to. But we're going to be doing a little bit of tweaking, like I'm kind of looking at it here. Just making sure those lines line up. Alright, let's uncheck this. And like I said, we're doing something very generic. Let's really move this out here. Yeah, it's really my way. Okay. So if I press 1, something else you notice is if you press 5, you get this orthographic view. So if I'm in perspective and I press 5, I get an orthographic perspective. And then I sort of get something they call the perspective or perspective. So there are two different views of how you could look at your model. And you have to switch between those. One's more of a fisheye and one's a standard view. So you can see it switches its perspective, and then I hit 5, and now I'm in an orthographic view, and it'll tell you up top here. All right, I think I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll start sculpting in the next video.